Hi everyone, my name is Ernesto Puerta. I'm the component lead for the dashboard. I took over from Lens last November, I think so. Since then we've been devoted to Pacific release, and also we're now working on the future Quincy release. So this will be we'll be covering the highlights for Pacific. Some of them have been already merged in Octopus release. So if you are running Octopus and you're using the dashboard, you might have seen some of these also in Octopus, because we've been pretty liberal regarding backporting features in the dashboard to previous releases, especially Octopus, given it was the first release coupled with Ceph ADM. So we wanted to ensure that all you could do or most of you could do in Pacific, you could also do that in Octopus. So let's start. So with that, this is a description of topics that we're going to cover today. Basically, there are 4 pillars regarding the Pacific release. The biggest one is the Ceph ADM integration. Actually, the broader topic is the orchestrator integration, but currently most of the focus has been around Ceph ADM. The question on the current support of Rook, it's still open. That, as I will mention in the last part, will be mostly for Quincy release. So some parts of this might be working on Rook, but yeah, that part is not has not been extensively reviewed. So most of this functionality only works currently with Ceph ADM. So apart from that, we have RGW. We have been putting a lot of strength and focused on RGW recently, and also the supporting advanced workflows around RGW, like multi-site monitoring or multi-site sync monitoring, also the multi-daemon management. There is some debate on what's the proper denomination for that, but it's multi-zone group. So prior to this, I will mention or will go into more details later. Apart from that, the other big thing in Pacific is the Restful API. So prior to Pacific, we already had an API for the dashboard that was unofficial. So it was being officialized in Pacific, and there was a commitment made for keeping this Restful API stable. Apart from that, there are notable security improvements. So that's also an area where we have put a lot of effort to improve the dashboard. So regarding the integration, basically these are the areas of the dashboard we have put more effort regarding the integration of Ceph ADM. So right now we support most of the features from Ceph ADM regarding the host management. As we may see here, we currently have the ability to create, edit, delete, and enter or modify the maintenance status of the host. So this is basically how you create a new host, and this is not exactly Pacific. Probably it will be backported too, but probably the last release of Pacific doesn't allow you to set up the network or the labels, but probably it will be in the next releases probably. Basically, this allows you to define the host name and also the address of the specific address. This has been a recent change in Ceph ADM, and also set up specific labels for that, as well as creating the node in maintenance mode. And this is basically how it looks like when you create a new node in maintenance mode. So it's basically the list of hosts created or managed by Ceph ADM. Additionally, in the service section, apart from adding and deleting multiple types of services in Pacific, I think recently there was a change for what was called previously as the HA RGW service. Now it's called Ingress, and it's a general HA service for all HTTP based or other kind of services. And that's not yet supported. Well, that's supported, yeah, in Pacific. I'm not thinking the latest version, but probably in the next one it will be released too. Apart from that, we support visualizing the service events. So now, if you follow a specific service, you can see the events that happened recently and affected that service. Apart from that, we have regarding the OSD management, the following actions. The creation was already supported. Well, actually, it was delivered to Octopus, but the replacement has been mostly worked out in during Pacific timeframe. I think it's probably available in Octopus as well now. So basically, when creating a OSD management, for those of you not familiar with that, you basically assign different devices to, well, you can have a simple OSD deployment, which is everything on a single device, and the hybrid deployments. So you can use this table just to set up the filtering criteria, what is called a drive group specification for the different devices in the cluster. That was already in Octopus. So the major addition here was the replacement workflow. So basically, you have the chance to decide whether you want to preserve the ID of the OSDs. So in that case, you would be replacing the disk or doing a removal of the disk and basically discarding that OSD ID, which would also cause some changes in the crash map, etc. So that's all regarding the orchestrator integration changes recently happening in Pacific. Regarding the RGW improvements, as mentioned, there are two big things. There are other minor improvements, but these are probably the two bigger things. One is the dashboard, Grafana dashboard for the RGW multi-site sync. So basically, that's providing information on the current status of the replication across realms and zones. That's I think also in all major releases. So it came from Pacific, but it's or will be available in the major Nautilus Octopus releases. And the other one is the management of the or selection of the daemon. Prior to this, from the dashboard, it was only possible to manage RGW with the default daemon or with a single daemon. After this change, a user will be able to manage multiple daemons. And I'm saying daemons because we are talking about connecting to a daemon, as that's what the dashboard user information that the dashboard admin has to provide or to configure. We are currently working and plan to work on improving this. So with RGW team and the FADM team as well. But yeah, basically that's it. So if you define more than a single daemon, you can manage multiple daemons and users and buckets associated to each of them. And that's it regarding the RGW multi-site and multi-daemon features. Regarding the Restful API, which is the first topic here, that's been delivered. As mentioned, we've been working with a REST API for the very beginning dashboard. So basically, the architecture was RESTful based. The front end basically consumed the backend REST API. But since Pacific, we decided to make this official. So this involves a commitment on adding versioning. So as mentioned here, everything that is versioned or tagged with a V1 version or above, it's stable or it's committed to be stable, while everything with a version 0 will be experimental and subject to change. This API is currently well tested, so we have like a 90% coverage, and it's currently tested on a PR basis. So every PR from every delivered to Ceph, except I think for the docs documentation PRs, we'll need to go through this stack of tests, and we also have having nightly builds just to ensure that there is nothing asynchronous that breaks the API. The documentation is both available at this URL. That's there is a documentation per release. This is for master, and there is documentation also available on a cluster via Swagger UI. So it's basically an online documentation, and you can also interact that. So it's interactive. You can send a request by using that. There is a helper for that. So if you're familiar with that, with Swagger UI, it's basically it. And it's following the Open API 3 specification. So that's it regarding the Restful API. Let's jump into the security improvements. This is, well, less, user impacting and unless you need to enforce some security standards. So we basically went through some pen test from, well, IBM. They were doing a pen test on the dashboard and they provide a lot of feedback on vulnerabilities that they detected. So currently we provide support for account lockout. Basically, after a given number of failed tries to log in, a user account will be locked. We also migrated from our use of local storage for storing sensitive information. Now we are using secure cookies. There are a lot of policies enforced for passwords strength, and that's I think something that came from Octopus. But yeah, it's I think worthy to mention here, and also the account expiration that was also there. But basically, all these things together, I think, account for a very good health in terms of security, especially given the dashboard is meant to be exposed, not sure if to the internet, but at least to beyond the usual lab or air-gapped environment. So that's it regarding Pacific. So let's see quickly how this is going to look like regarding the dashboard. Basically, well, if you're interested in the specific items, you can visit that URL and specifically the dashboard column. And then there are the 5-6 pillars that we are going to focus on for Quincy release. First one is provide end-to-end user workflows or high-level ones, like the cluster installation wizard. We are currently working on that, and other kind of wizards like grades or anything that you feel that would need a guided experience will be basically exposed as a wizard. The idea is to provide a walled garden experience, or as Jeff likes to say, Hotel California experience, right? So basically, the purpose of this is that we are able to provide as much features as usual Ceph operator or user needs to find on the dashboard. And we were also thinking on providing a fallback CLI embedded in the UI, like a toolbox thing. Yep, that's also under exploration. I mentioned about this lack of support or incomplete support on the Rook orchestrator in the dashboard. And that's, as mentioned, it's something to explore. So it's a rinse and clean task. Let's see what is the current status of this and how much work do you need to do that on that front. Probably there will be some things that you can do with Ceph ADM that won't be available in the Rook orchestrator because they basically contradict the philosophy of Rook and Kubernetes. But yeah, we'll try to at least keep some parity with Ceph ADM. Regarding the multi-site and multi-cluster, these two topics are around scaling beyond the single cluster. So the first one, currently the dashboard supports for RGW mirroring, which would be the multi-site support for RBD. There are some gaps here, like the snapshot-based mirroring, and also regarding RGW, there is currently no support apart from the monitoring, and there is no support at all for Ceph's mirroring, so that will also have to be there. And regarding the multi-cluster support, the idea is that being able from a single cluster to manage multiple clusters, so it's the focus is a bit different than of the regular multi-site one, and using a single manager or UI as a gateway to multiple clusters. Apart from that, we will continue with this focused on RGW advanced workflows. Basically, we're thinking on adding bucket policies, lifecycle, server-side encryption, bucket notification, more or less keeping some parity with what the AWS console gives you for S3 management. And regarding the observability, well, we are considering something like log aggregation, for example. So that's something that we've got from the user survey, lack of logs or centralized logs. And well, that's mostly it. So do you have any questions, any topics that you want to bring up?
Are there plans for the we discussed some of this offline, for improved performance in terms of listing multiple entries in various tables, such as RBD image listing and things like that. Perhaps caching or pagination.
Yeah. I haven't mentioned that. That's something that we need to tackle. Thing is that we haven't got many reports from in the Ceph user survey on complaints about that part. But on the other hand, the ones that we've got are really disastrous because it's basically pointing to some scalability issue in that part. I'm not sure if we have here users of Ceph dashboard that are managing RBD from the dashboard, can share their experience with that. Kelly, I'm not sure if you wanted to bring a specific topic on that part, on the integration or.
No, I just noticed that it wasn't talked about. So the two things on the RBD front that I was looking for, one of them you mentioned was the integration for snapshot-based mirroring, and the other one that I thought was on the roadmap is the performance improvements in terms of like image listing and things like that. And I just since it might be the case that even if you have like hundreds of images, maybe it's not that big of a deal, because if you look at the current design, yes, it's a huge issue from the scalability perspective, but maybe that scalability limit is not as low as they think. So maybe a few hundred images is still good enough with the current implementation, and it's a question of how many users would we have with that many images that would rely on the dashboard for managing them, because if you don't open that tab, right, it's not going to do it's not going to impact you, if I understand correctly. So maybe it doesn't actually need to be that high on the list. Yep. Just a thought. It's
Yeah. At least from the telemetry reports, we know that there are some users running beyond 1,000 of images. So yeah, that's something that probably will hit a bottleneck. But the average or the median is not that high, and probably that explains what we're not having so many reports of these issues. But definitely something that we need to tackle. I didn't want to focus on internal cleanups or refactoring, but yeah, that's something that we have in mind for Quincy, definitely. And I see some. Yeah, please, Mike.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was going to mention that Brian left a question about Grafana tempo. We haven't any work around this. Do you have a specific suggestion for that? Brian? Okay, yeah. Well, we were thinking, or there were some discussions around supporting some kind of log aggregation in the same way as currently we have Grafana embedded within the dashboard, centralizing the logs as well and having everything in a single place, maybe with an ELK stack or some kind of centralized logging stack. But yeah, regarding tracing, we don't have anything planned. I think there is some teams working on Jagger, right? I think RGW team was doing that. Not sure if other teams were doing that. So yeah. Yeah, I would also like to mention that as well, we were basically debriefing on the Ceph user survey. And from the findings that we got from that one of the things that even if the users that don't actively use the dashboard, they still rely or they'll still visit the landing page from time to time. So we would like to put some focus on that component so everyone can benefit from that. And yeah, probably with the advent of Ceph ADM, the dashboard will make more sense as it provides, I think a nicer experience if you don't want to fully rely on the CLI. At least we're trying to aggregate more data and presenting the data in a fancier way than compared to the CLI. So that those could be two areas where we may see more adoption of the dashboard in the near term. Okay, so just as a reminder, these are the places that you can contact us, the whole Ceph team, or well, the dashboards. You may see there is a specific Ceph dashboard IRC channel, so you can reach out to us in that IRC channel. And apart from that, well, in GitHub, every PR labeled with the dashboard will end up on our package, so we will follow those apps if you want to contribute. And yep, we were also thinking on doing some tech talks on the dashboard also to, well, and yep, basically share how to do a code walkthrough on the dashboard as well, just to share a bit the current development and, well, how we're working on the dashboard team.